The fall of the Sheriff King, America's toughest sheriff. In the heart of Arizona's desert, where the heat burns hotter than mercy, one man built his empire. A sheriff who called himself a hero. A lawman who became a legend, and then a criminal. For 24 years, Sheriff Joe Arpaio ruled Maricopa County with an iron fist. He made prisoners live in tents under 110-degree heat, fed them moldy bread, and dressed them in pink underwear. He called it justice. Others called it cruelty. But power has a price. And for Arpaio, the same system he claimed to protect would become the one that tore him down. Joe Arpaio wasn't born in the desert. He was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, the son of Italian immigrants. He joined the army, then the DAS. He saw himself as a man who brought order to chaos. In 1992, he ran for sheriff in Maricopa County. His campaign was simple: be tough, be feared, and never back down. And the people loved it. They were tired of crime, tired of fear. They wanted someone who would make criminals suffer, so Joe gave them a show. He built Tent City, an open-air jail made of military surplus tents. Temperatures inside could hit 130 degrees Fahrenheit. When reporters asked if it was humane, Joe smiled. He said, "It's a jail, not a hotel. If you don't like it, don't come back." It was a sound bite America couldn't resist. National news crowned him America's toughest sheriff. He basked in the fame and the power. But behind the cameras, Arpaio's empire was darker than it appeared. Inside Tent City, inmates collapsed from heat stroke. Some died. Medical care was almost non-existent. Guards were told to be ruthless. And Arpaio's office ignored the complaints. His cruelty wasn't limited to inmates. He became obsessed with illegal immigration, raiding neighborhoods, pulling over anyone who looked suspicious, and humiliating Latino residents. He called it law and order. Civil rights groups called it racial profiling. Still, Arpaio's popularity soared. He posed with tanks, marched in parades, and called himself the last real cop in America. But while he played sheriff on TV, real crimes were being ignored. Investigations later found that hundreds of sex crime cases, many involving children, were mishandled or buried by his office. Justice wasn't blind in Maricopa County. It was suffocating under Arpaio's badge. By the late 2000s, the tide began to turn. The Department of Justice opened an investigation into racial profiling, inmate abuse, and corruption. Federal courts ordered Arpaio to stop targeting Latino drivers. He ignored the order. The Sheriff King had grown untouchable, or so he thought. He doubled down. He launched investigations into judges, politicians, and journalists who criticized him. One reporter said, "I wish, if Joe didn't like you, he'd find a way to make your life miserable." Even his own deputies began to turn against him. The legend was cracking, and the law was closing in. In 2011, the Department of Justice accused Arpaio's office of the worst pattern of racial profiling in U.S. history. He was ordered to reform his department, to train his deputies to respect the Constitution. He didn't. S3. Instead, he held rallies, gave interviews, and told his followers that Washington was the enemy. He said, "They're after me because I'm doing my job." But by 2016, his time was up. A federal judge charged him with criminal contempt for violating court orders. Arpaio faced up to 6 months in jail, a bitter irony for the man who once bragged about making others suffer in his tents. Then came the election. After 24 years, voters finally said no. The Sheriff King had fallen. On July 31, 2017, Joe Arpaio was convicted. For the first time in decades, he faced the reality of being on the other side of the law. But just weeks later, President Donald Trump pardoned him. Justice, it seemed, would once again bend to power. Arpaio's empire crumbled. Tent City was shut down. Maricopa County paid tens of millions of dollars in lawsuits and settlements to victims of his policies. Even his former deputies admitted they'd built a culture of fear. One said, "We thought we were keeping order, but we were just following a man, not the law." Today, Arpaio is in his 90s, still claiming he did nothing wrong. He calls himself a patriot, but history calls him something else. A warning. In the desert sun of Arizona, the ruins of Tent City still stand. A monument to power unchecked. A reminder that justice, when wielded like a weapon, always turns on its master. Because every empire, no matter how mighty, eventually meets its fall. And sometimes, the sheriff becomes the prisoner. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more historical documentary.